To Purple Daily, Phil Mackey, Judd Zolgad, Courtney Cronin from ESPN.com, and also Declan Goff is producing here. And let's just start with I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off with this question here. We're all excited because sports are kind of coming back here, and the NBA's got their plan, and NHL's got a plan, and Major League Baseball is starting workouts this week, and football has just done everything the same so far this year. Is this going to get buzz-killed? Like, are we going to, with the spikes that are happening right now in this country, is this going to get buzz-killed at some point?
I hope not. But I'm also trying to be very Zolgadian in my approach here and take the pessimistic view. So maybe that will, by way of the universe working in the way that it does in Judd's brain, maybe that'll actually, I'll be so pessimistic about something that it'll end up going the opposite way. The pendulum will go the opposite way.
You know me too well.
Things will happen the way I want them to. It's the million-dollar question. We just don't know. I feel like I'm on radio every single week breaking down, well, baseball's coming back. What percentage chance do you give these teams in actually being able to play a 60-game season when you're not at regional or a bubble event? And, I mean, that's kind of where football's at right now. We're not hearing anything about a bubble approach, which MLS is doing in Orlando, the NBA is doing in Orlando, the NWSL is doing that out in Utah. Maybe that's the way to go. Football has kind of stayed on course, Phil, and said that they're going to continue on with their initial plans of being able to do this at their respective sites. It's weird. It's June 30th right now. Training camp's supposed to be in less than a month. We still don't know. No one has said anything about, hey, might want to prepare to not have fans at games. The NFL is marching full steam ahead saying that that's going to happen. And it's, we don't even have a training camp schedule yet. So I try to take this on a day-to-day approach. I try to talk to people in the Vikings organization and throughout the league to figure out, hey, when are you going back to the office? What do coronavirus tests look like? How many times a week do you have to get tested? And I know that in speaking with someone with the Vikings, they're estimating that they're going to need about 200,000 tests this season. That's a lot. And obviously,
just the Vikings?
Yeah, each team. And so, I mean,
yes, I'm not getting a test.
Yeah, so I mean, and they don't. The NFL specifically, I know the rhetoric is they don't want to be taking those tests away from other people. They don't want to be absorbing all the resources needed. So that's something else you have to consider. I think the only way you can approach this is to move forward thinking that it's going to happen, but you're going to see a season that's unlike any other, and that you're just going to have to concede that things are going to suck from time to time. That there may be outbreaks in certain franchises where you lose star players for a week or two. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. The only good thing I can say right now is that we're supposed to have a few leagues be the guinea pig here. We'll see if that actually happens.
I love how, if Judd has a cough and a 104 fever, but Eric Kendricks needs to go to practice, who's getting that test?
Oh,
it's Eric Kendricks.
Here lies Judd Zolgad, who could have been saved, except he wasn't. And by the way, the Vikings beat the Packers, so that was great. Too bad for Judd. Coming up next, St. Louis Park man dies so Vikings can live in the playoff race. It's the Vikings and the Packers. So Courtney, let me go down this path because I do applaud football and in recent months, the off-season programs that they've had or things that they've done. They've found a really good way to do a draft that a lot of people thought was going to be damn near impossible. It went great. The schedule release, which is a small thing ordinarily, but they did it, and they're like, you know what, we're doing it. And I think we all said, bravo, good. But it feels like, Courtney, there's a bit of hubris here now in they're proceeding now as if they're going to go to training camp, and when you get all of these human beings together, they're going to try to carry on business as usual, which I don't get. And to your point, and this is the baseball and football problem, the fact that they're not going to really isolate players and put them in a bubble to me is inviting problems. So I'm with you, and we can't predict what's going to happen. But I think if they came to us and said, tell us what you think of our path, I think we would all say, you might want to slow this down just a bit and rethink the fact that in April and May, normal is fine. But when we really get people back together in mass like this, you're probably being a little bit too optimistic in what you can pull off. And just because you are the most popular sport in America does not mean that the coronavirus gods are going to be like, football gets a pass. We'll let you guys be normal.
Well, they've been waiting for the shoe to drop. So it's like, what's the point that what point do they have to get to where they say, okay, we know that we've said that fans can come all along. Well, because this event happened, because there was a spike in this many cases, no fans this season. What are they waiting for? That's the thing that I'm struggling with, because I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are they going to need to happen in the world, in our climate, to know that you need to push training camp back? That you need to take those first 4 games of the schedule, which they scheduled strategically so they could be moved to January if need be. What's it going to take for that to be, enacted? What's it going to take for them to potentially have to end the season early? I don't know. And I mean, that's the thing. It's this waiting game, but are we going to be waiting till the 11th hour? To figure this whole thing out? That doesn't seem smart. And of course, they're probably not publicly announcing any of this. I'm sure they have contingency plans, but just like with the draft, I mean, they kept saying, yep, draft is moving on normal. See you in Vegas. Okay, well, it's just going to be players, no fans. Okay, well, it's going to be from Roger Goodell's basement now. That's the route that they went. And it was a little change each time until you got to the inevitable, which was inevitable from the start. And that's kind of what I feel like we're going to have here. Certainly no fans this year. There's no way. Not until a vaccine.
Here?
Anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, there's no vaccine.
They shouldn't. But they said that the last thing I saw last week was, at that point, they were going to abide state by state. And so, Green Bay Packer games could have X amount of fans. I'm with you completely. I think allowing fans in is ridiculous.
Even with masks, it's just not safe right now.
The most important thing is to play, right? And the most important bit of income is TV. So, why would you jeopardize what CBS, Fox, blah, 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 are going to pay you so that Lambeau Field can have 30,000 people? That makes no sense to me.
To me, one of the real issues here, and we talked about this on the Mackey and Judd show earlier this week, the Minnesota Twins were the first team to come out and say, hey, we've got a couple older assistant coaches, 65 and 66 or whatever. Those guys, we're going to pay them, but they are not going to be part of the season. They are not going to be around the players. If you start to look at the mortality rates and the different, who gets, when you get COVID, who gets it the worst, if you're under the age of 40, especially under the age of 30, and not to say that you can't get knocked on your ass if you're a 30-year-old or a 22-year-old with COVID, because we have seen examples, but the high-risk people are the ones in the NFL that would be 60-year-old offensive line coach guy, or, 64-year-old head coach guy in the Vikings case. That's the discussion that I think we have to get to, which is, all right, there's going to be positive tests. Who is at risk if they catch COVID more than the others? And what do teams do if a guy, if 5 guys have no symptoms but test positive, are they still sitting out for 2 weeks? How do you handle those situations? I mean, I think that the NFL hasn't even scratched the surface on uncomfortable older coach conversations yet.
Yeah, or overweight head coaches or coaches who already have underlying health concerns. I mean, think about the Vikings right now. Gary Kubiak had to retire from Denver because of health concerns. And, this is technically his first year back into full-blown coaching in an offensive coordinator role. Do you want to put him at that sort of risk? And I mean, that's the question that he's got to ask himself. It's a question he's got to work through with the organization. But there are a lot of older NFL head coaches. I mean, we know that this virus does not discriminate. Not just because, if you're a head coach doesn't mean that you're immune from getting it. And I think that it's just a situation now, too, of testing. How often are you going to be doing this? How quickly can you get results? And what are you going to do if your head coach goes down for a few weeks because he's got COVID? I mean, what do you do in that circumstance? I don't know how teams are working through those scenarios, but it's certainly something that, right now at the end of June they have to consider.
Here's why I would advocate taking the at-risk people and saying no for 2020. Because, Courtney, I do believe that God forbid a person dies, okay, the sport is going to stop. I don't think that the National Football League, as brutal as they might seem as a business, can be well, that's too bad. Such and such a coach died, but we're going to put a patch on and we're going to play for that coach. So that being said, I think this isn't about the person It's about what can you absorb. And if people get sick, okay, that stinks. They're out. But if they're fine, that's going to work, and you're certainly not going to shut down. Mm-hmm. But that's where I think the conversation has to be like, if this is an at-risk person and God forbid they die, one, we have to stop. Two, we probably can get sued. And
sure.
and that's why I think you really need to go down the heartless path of saying to a guy like Kubiak, Gary, I'm really sorry, but you cannot take part in 2020. 2021, hopefully you can.
Is there a way to minimize exposure? Let's take Kubiak and Zimmer, 58, 64, not the greatest of health guys, right?
Yep.
For their ages. Can those guys still contribute and just have less contact than they normally would? Like, they can still grind film and come up with schemes and things like that, right?
I feel like it's going to be so hard to tell coaches. Like, you can coach in plexiglass, essentially, or
put
coach
them in
your
a
little
phone
bubble.
booth on
boy
the
in a bubble like
sideline.
Travolta back in the movie.
Yes, but I
the
mean,
boy in a plastic bubble.
I just don't see how they're going to. That's deviating too much from normalcy for them. Like, at least now with Zoom and with, Microsoft Teams and the way that they've been able to coach and teach over the internet, that's one thing. But when it comes down to like actually being in season mode and coaching, it takes it to a completely different level. I don't know that anybody would follow those guidelines, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, and if you have, so what, your roster is 53 men. We're talking about extra practice squad players, right, Courtney?
And they're going to increase that number because they're anticipating.
Do you want to tell me that these, for the most part, young, healthy males are all going to stay away from bars and clubs? Because that's the thing is, it just takes one dumb practice squad kid to go out, party, have a great time, go in the locker room. He spreads it to 2 more players or 3 more who don't get sick, but they're in direct contact with Kubiak or Zimmer.
Sure.
And now you've got a problem, because that's, if I trusted players, I'd say, you know what, maybe. But my thing is, you can't trust players.
And even the step behind like coaches getting sick is, if 10 guys don't get symptoms but test positive, we have to you have to take them out of the games for 2 or 3 weeks.
Correct.
Right? Like, your roster could be ravaged without anyone even catching a fever by just testing positive before a practice on a Thursday.
Well, and it's also like, I think we're going to find out soon with the NBA and MLS, if those do indeed take off, how do players react in a bubble environment where they're essentially stuck there? Like, because I know they've got that snitch line, for lack of a better term, in the NBA, where you can report anonymous tips for whoever
Our point guard's out.
is violating.
Party.
Yeah, I mean, with the NBA, it's kind of like, all right, it's a truncated season anyways. Like, a lot of people are comparing that to Summer League. Like, how many guys are going to get out there, take it seriously at first, and then be like, yeah, screw this. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. The NFL, I mean, you're just starting up. It's not like it's not some continuation there where it kind of feels like a lost season anyways. There's still hope for a full season, so you'd hope that players would take it seriously, and you'd hope that bars would be closed. I mean, I have no issue, with bars remaining closed for the rest of 2020 if it means we get to have football. Drink at home. It's cheaper, and you can overserve yourself. Like, I mean,
great, yeah.
it's.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
To every night of the week for everyone on this show.
And you also gain substantial weight. I can tell you that too.
But I mean, it's for players have to be smart. Like, I think across sports wide, like. You have an opportunity to come back here. So if you're going to jeopardize it by going out to a bar, if you're some young, dumb rookie, then you shouldn't be playing the sport anyways. I mean, but how are they going to police that? Is there going to, are you going to put players in a hotel, in that big Vikings Lake hotel for the entire season? Can you do that? Like, can you, I know they do it during training camp for, most of the younger players and rookies, but can you do that for veterans like Kyle Rudolph? Could you, and Adam Thielen and those guys, do you say you have to stay here and not be with your families the whole next 4 or 5 months? I mean, that's tough. So, I don't know, a lot of red tape to jump through. I just try to keep remaining optimistic that at least we're going to get to training camp.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if it's pushed back, though. If we end up having a big spike in cases, why not just start it like middle of August and try to give yourself a little bit more time to get ahead of this thing?
We're just jonesing for a little special teams practice. Just a little punt practice.
Alley wedge right, Phil. Alley wedge right.
Alley wedge right.
Little long
Alley
snapping.
wedge left. Yes.
Yes.
That's what Cronin loves.
All about it.
Her and Collar love the long snappers.
Yes. So, and by the way, for people wondering, Collar is at Purple Insider now, purpleinsider.com. You can find his podcast. Courtney's on that podcast every so often, weekly, whatever. And you guys have been making up talkers just like we have with no football here. But we're gonna hope that they at least find a way to push forward here, and we'll have more of these discussions as we go. That's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Courtney Cronin from ESPN.com. And if you could do us a favor and click the subscribe button on our YouTube page and engage in the comments too. You can call us idiots, whatever. It's great. The comment section is great. Someone wanted Judd kicked off the show last week. Judd or blank instead of Kirk or blank, which we could do at some point.
Man, that would be a fun one.
We'll definitely do that.
I pick Zulgad every time, though.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm loyal. Homer.
She's the greatest.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Purple Daily.
Courtney.
We'll see you next time.